Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Frequently Asked Questions Entering Your Experience webinar. My name is Meredith Bonington, and I'm a marketing specialist here at CFP Board, joined by two colleagues on our experience team today. Kia Reed, our Director of Experience, and Jaleel Davis, our Experience Program Specialist. In this webinar today, Kia will review the most commonly asked questions around the experience submission process and walk you through the proper navigation on your account. If you have a question at any time during this webinar, please submit them in the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. A team member will either answer your question live or type a response in a direct message reply. If for any reason we do not make it to your question today, please email experience@cfpboard.org for an answer. And now I'll pass this over to Kia, our Director of Experience, to get started.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Kia Reed. I am the Director of Continuing Education and Experience, and today we're just going to talk about how to log your experience into your account. So to get started, to enter your experience, you need to log into your account at www.cfp.net. Once you are logged in, you will see your candidate dashboard, which outlines the 4 E's that you need to complete for CFP certification. Click on the Report Experience button in your dashboard and then the gold Report Experience button to access the Experience Reporting portal. To add a position, click on the Add Experience button. Please note that you should only add one position per entry. If you have multiple positions to enter your first one by clicking Add Experience and submit it. Then click Add Experience again to enter your next position, and so on. When you are entering a position, you will see 3 screens. The first screen will ask you to select the experience type that best describes what you do on a daily basis. The second will ask you to enter your position details, and the third will ask you to enter supervisor information. The first screen asks you to choose what best describes what you do and how you interact with clients on a daily basis. You can click Show Help to show definition of each type of experience. Select the type that fits the position you are entering and click Continue. For the apprenticeship pathway, you must select the first option. I primarily engage with clients for financial planning purposes. Once you do that, click Continue. The second page will ask you to enter and select your position details. The first section includes your company name, start date, end date if applicable, and position title. The second section includes selecting the area or areas of the financial planning process in which you are involved. You can click Show Help to show definitions of each of the elements of the financial planning process. For the apprenticeship pathway, you must select that you perform all elements of the process. The third section includes entering the number of hours per week you are completing those activities, and if the position is self-employed, pro bono, or volunteer. For the number of hours worked per week, the maximum you can enter is 40 hours. If your hours vary a little bit each week, you can enter the average number of hours worked per week. If your hours change significantly over a long period of time, you may want to consider entering those as 2 separate roles. If entries over multiple dates overlap, the combined total still needs to be under 40 hours a week. For the apprenticeship pathway, you cannot select that you are self-employed, pro bono, or volunteering. When you are done, please click Continue. The third page will ask you to enter your supervisor's name and email address. For the apprenticeship pathway, you must also enter your supervising CFP professional's CFP Board ID number. After entering their ID number, click Validate. This will ensure the individual is certified and fill in their primary name and email on file for verification purposes. You will be asked to acknowledge that the experience you are entering is accurate. When you are ready, click Save. After you enter the position, you will see the details and how many hours you have completed on your experience reporting profile. At this point, you can click Add Experience to enter more experience. If you have entered all that you can and your experience hours are not complete, you will see either the option to refresh those hours or that your experience is under internal review. If your experience is under internal review, please wait for our experience team to contact you with next steps. If your experience is in an enter status and you have no other experience to enter, you can exit and come back to click the Refresh Hours link to update your time periodically. If you have already surpassed the 6,000 or 4,000 hour threshold, please note that you do not need to add any additional experience. If your experience hours are completed, you will see a Submit button to officially attest to your hours and submit them for completion. At that point, your experience may be selected for verification. If verification is required, you will see your experience status change to pending verification until we have received your supervisor's verification. All apprenticeship experience hours must be verified by your supervisor, so you will see your apprenticeship position go into a pending verification status. Once your supervisor verifies your experience, it will be completed. For more information, please visit cfp.net/experience or email experience@cfpboard.org if you require additional assistance.
Thank you, Kia. We have now entered our Q&A session, so at this time, please enter any questions you have in the Q&A chat box below. I'll give everybody a few minutes to submit before we begin. All right, it looks like we have our first question. Um, Looks like we have a question about the apprenticeship versus the standard pathway. So, Kia, would you mind sharing a little bit about the difference between the two?
Sure. The difference between the two, the standard pathway is 6,000 hours for the requirement. And for the standard pathway, you can fulfill your experience requirement either through personal delivery, indirect support, or direct support. However, with the apprenticeship hours, it must be personal delivery, meaning that you must have engaged with clients during that financial planning process, and you must be under the supervision of a CFP professional in order for it to count for the apprenticeship hours.
Thank you. And we seem to have another question about this as well. Can you combine hours from the apprenticeship pathway and the standard pathway to fulfill the experience requirement?
So you can combine hours under the standard pathway. So if you have some apprenticeship pathway hours, those will roll up automatically to count under that standard pathway. However, it does not work in the reverse. You cannot have standard pathway hours apply to the apprenticeship pathway hours.
Thank you. Seems like we have another question about financial planning as self-employed. So if someone does financial planning as self-employed, would the supervisor information be filled out with the client's information, or would you be able to share a little bit more about what information would be filled out there?
So for that particular part, for self-employed, you must have a qualified attester. So it is not your client that you're working with. It has to be someone else who's qualified, either as a CFP professional themselves. They have to have a PhD in business or economics. They could be a licensed attorney, a CPA. There are about 7 things on our list that would constitute being a qualified attester.
Thank you. And it looks like we have a couple of questions in the chat box asking about experience previously submitted and where to access that. So if someone's wondering how they can see their full experience entries after they've already submitted them, and is there's any place to see a history of what was submitted, and if so, who to reach out to for that?
Sure. So when you log into your account, you'll have your dashboard right there. You want to click on that experience bar and it'll take you to where you can see everything that you've submitted. If you are not seeing that, which is very rare, but if you are not, please email us at experience@cfpboard.org and we'll be able to walk you through the process.
Thank you. Looks like someone has a question about after passing the CFP exam, how long do they have to gain and enter their experience?
So they have up to 5 years, I believe, to gain that experience after the exam. Jalil, if you want to answer that too, maybe I missed something there, but if not, I think I kind of covered that one.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Oh, the question was regarding if someone passed the CFP exam, how long do they have to gain and enter their experience?
Yes, they have 5 years before they will have to test and pass the exam again.
Right.
Looks like we have another question. Someone's wondering, what if their supervisor doesn't have a CFP accreditation certification? For an example, this individual works part-time doing pro bono work, and their supervisor is not a CFP professional. Would that have any impact on their experience requirement?
So if it is pro bono work, they can still use a qualified attester, or actually they must use a qualified attester. And so that has to be someone who has one of the following licenses. Either they're a CFP, they're a chartered financial consultant, they're a chartered life underwriter, a chartered financial analyst. They either have a PhD in business or economics. They can be a licensed attorney, or they can be a CPA. So any of those 7 qualify as a qualified attester. And so you do need a qualified attester when you are submitting pro bono or self-employed experience.
Thank you. Looks like someone is curious about some examples of what could be classified as indirect support. Kia, would you be able to elaborate a little bit on that for the experience requirement?
So the indirect support, they're either indirectly supporting the financial planner or the financial planning process, but they are not specifically dealing with clients. So we've had people who are, let me think of a very good example. It has to be a position that is firmly rooted in that financial planning process, but they could be assisting in the back office. They could be compiling reports. They could be compiling reports for the financial planner to ultimately service the client. Any of those kind of types of activities qualifies indirect support. But what you can always do is, if you're not sure, you can always email us and we'll be able to take a look at that for you and answer your question there. So don't forget, the email address is experience@cfpboard.org.
Thank you. Looks like we have another question. Someone's wondering, so after passing the exam and having 5 years to complete the experience, they're wondering if there's a CE requirement during this time frame, and if so, what would that time frame look like to complete?
So they do not have to start completing the CE requirement until 13 months after they've passed the exam. And then after that, it accrues, I believe, at 1.25 hours per month that they must complete. But they'll also be able to see that on their dashboard, how many hours they need to complete for CE if they've passed that 13-month threshold.
I see. Thank you. Looks like we have a question here. Someone currently works with a CFP as their supervisor, and they are on the apprenticeship pathway. This individual is wondering, do they enter their hours now and refresh as they continue to work, or should they wait after the 4,000 hours are completed to submit their hours?
That is a personal decision. They can do either one. My suggestion is always to submit your experience now and continue to refresh every few months. But again, I've seen folks also wait till the end of that 4,000 hours and just submit it as one block of experience hours. It's really what you're comfortable with and what your preference is.
Perfect. Someone else is asking for some elaboration on the CE requirements. So what are the CE requirements if you meet the experience requirement over a year after passing the exam? I guess that ties into the question we previously asked, but
Yes.
maybe just clarify on that point a little bit.
So again, you can look on your dashboard and you'll see what your CE requirement is. Again, it's 13 months after you've passed the exam that you will have to start taking that CE unless you've done all of the other things, which is meeting your experience, you're having your education, all of those things. If you've done all of the E's, then you don't need to meet the CE requirement. But if you have not, then you have to do CE 13 months after you've passed the exam. And it does accrue at 1.25 hours per month. And you'll see again that tally on your dashboard of what you have to take.
Looks like we have another question. This individual is wondering, would employment outside of the United States, for instance, in the United Kingdom, in relevant areas of financial planning, wealth advisory, or wealth management fields be considered or acceptable count towards the CFP work experience requirements?
So yes, if you worked outside of the US, international experience does qualify as long as it meets our standards, which is direct support, indirect support, or personal delivery during that financial planning process. So the answer is yes, international experience does qualify.
Looks like we have another question. Someone's wondering how they would calculate their experience hours in a role where, in addition to financial planning, there is also a sale of products, for an example, insurance. Would you have any advice for this candidate?
So if you're doing the sales part, you would have to take that out of the equation. So it's only the personal financial planning delivery that counts towards experience. So if 27 out of your 40 hours per week counts towards the personal financial planning delivery process, then that's what you put in your hours. It's 27 hours instead of the full 40 hours per week. I hope that clarified that. If not, I can elaborate a little bit more if you just want to give us an email and we'll be able to respond to that.
Yes, and again, for anyone, I see there were some folks that joined us a little bit later on the webinar. Just to emphasize Kia's point, if there's any questions we don't get to during our 30-minute time period today, definitely email experience@cfpboard.org. You can also go to cfp.net/experience on our experience page to read a little bit more about the requirement and information we have there. Looks like someone has another question. Can we go over and clarify a little bit the mechanics of the approval process for the standard pathway? Does the qualified attester get an email once we submit at cfp.net? How exactly does this system work?
So for the standard pathway, once you submit your experience to us, we verify what you say is true. So we do send a verification email to your supervisor. Please note that for the standard pathway, it does not have to meet that qualified attester threshold, which means either being a licensed attorney, a CFP professional, or having a PhD in business or in economics. It just has to be your supervisor. So once you submit that experience, we will send an email to verify your experience to your supervisor. And once they respond, whether they deny it or approve it, then you'll get an email from us letting you know next steps.
Thank you. It looks like someone has a question. For an ongoing internship that will last several months, is it better to just submit it once the internship is completed or just to submit it periodically, like every month? So I guess that ties in to that earlier previous question on how exactly a candidate would want to submit their experience. But would you mind speaking a little bit to that as well, or, talking about internship experience? I know we've talked previously in the other questions, it was more in line with a job.
Sure. For that, it's still the same process. It's your preference. Now, if you know your internship is only going to be 3 months, I would suggest waiting until the end of your internship to submit that experience. However, it really is your personal preference, whatever you decide. If you want to do it every month, then just keep clicking the refresh button. You're welcome to do that, or you can wait until the end of your internship and submit your experience then.
Thank you. And thank you for clarifying as well that this is the same situation as it would be for any other work experience with that internship. Looks like we have another question. So someone changed jobs, and when entering the new employer information, they received a notification saying that these dates overlap with existing experience. This candidate is wondering what they should do and how to move forward as they submit their experience.
Sure. So for something like that, it may just be a system error. So what I would suggest they do is just send us an email at experience@cfpboard.org, and we'll be able to look into their account and fix that for them.
Great. Looks like someone else has another question around the mechanics of submitting, experience on the account. This individual is wondering how to see if they entered the information correctly when it currently is showing not as editable.
So when it says not editable, you can give us an email and we can go in and or do a screenshot for you for that. But what happens is when it goes to that not editable status, that means that we've already sent the verification out, meaning that you can't change anything about it because we're waiting for your supervisor to attest to your experience. But if you need to change something during that process, please just give us an email and we'll be able to fix that entry for you or update it as needed.
Thank you. Looks like we have another question. We have a candidate that is a career changer, and they're wondering, how does a candidate formally request an extension for completing the work experience requirement, and if there is an extension possibility, and then if so, what would that maximum be?
So the experience can go back 10 years from the date that you took the exam or 5 years forward. If your experience is outside of those date ranges, you can always give us an email or send us an email, and then we can do a policy exception where you can fill out a policy exception form, and then you can go from there and we can see if we can make changes to that experience for you.
Thank you. Looks like we also have another question, maybe asking for some clarity on that. Someone's wondering if they can apply for an extension to the 5-year period if they're unable to complete the experience requirement hours by then.
You can. Again, if you need more time, you can always email us and we will send you a policy exception form that you will fill out. Again, that goes to a committee for review, but 9 times out of 10, that request is granted.
Thank you. Someone here is wondering, how would it work if someone has applicable experience from a previous employer and both themselves and that supervisor are no longer with that company?
So they would still need the supervisor or someone in their HR department to attest to the fact that they did complete that that they did complete that experience. And so you can always use your former supervisor. They don't need to be working there for them to attest to your experience. However, if they're not willing to, or you're not able to get in contact with them, I would suggest you reach out to your HR department and have them attest to your experience.
Thank you. We have a follow-up question on the individual that previously asked about seeing historical entries into their account. Online, they can see their entry, but not the full details on when and what they entered and the description. They're wondering where they can find this information.
If they can't see it, it probably is in a non-editable status. So I suggest that you reach out to us at experience@cfpboard.org, and we'll be able to give you that information that you need.
Thank you. Someone here is wondering what counts towards the continuing education requirement and where they could find more information on locating opportunities for this. Would you have any examples to share with this candidate?
So we do have a search link on our website, and you can just type in the search bar continuing education, and it'll take you to our portal where you can search for all of the continuing education that's available to you. We have currently almost 15,000 active CE programs that you can choose from our various sponsors. So there is a repository there on our website where you can pick and choose what kind of CE you'd like to take.
Thank you. We have a question here wondering if pro bono experience would count towards the apprenticeship pathway.
So the pro bono experience, it has to, so for the apprenticeship, you have to work directly under a CFP professional. That means they are supervising your work. They are with you throughout the process of these 4,000 hours that you have to complete. Pro bono means that you're doing something on your own for a person. And so therefore, there is a little bit of difference there. The apprenticeship pathway, it has to be all 7 elements that we listed that have to be met, and it has to be under the direct supervision of a CFP professional. With pro bono, you may not meet all of the 7 elements that are required for that, which is why there is that distinction.
Thank you. We have someone here saying they've completed all the other E's of the CFP process, and they're currently working on the experience requirement. They're wondering, once they complete the experience requirement, what is the process from there?
So once they complete that experience requirement, they have to go into their account. They'll click on the submit button to attest that they have completed all of that experience. And then once they do that, they just move on into the next step of the process, which is, since they've completed everything else, they'll do the background check. And once that background check is complete, they can pay their fees and they will be able to use the CFP marks. I can't say, I'm sorry, Meredith, I can't say how long that will take. Probably a few weeks is my best guess, but it just depends on how long it takes you to click submit, and then how long it takes for the background process to be completed.
Thank you. And it looks like we have time for one more question today. We have someone wondering, how soon in advance can a policy exception form be submitted? And they're wondering, does the clock for a 3-year extension start after the 5 years have ended, or does it start once the form is processed?
It starts once the form is processed and approved, but I would ask that person to email us at experience@cfpboard.org, only because policy exceptions are not in our normal process of doing experience submissions. So it may be a little bit different. So what we approve for them may be a little bit different from what we approve from someone else. So really, it just depends. So to get a more clear answer about that policy exception, please just give us an email and we'll be able to give you the details specific to your account.
Great. And it looks like that's actually all we have for time today. So again, if you have an unanswered question we weren't able to get to, please email experience@cfpboard.org, and also visit cfp.net/experience for more information and resources. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.